good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to the public forum for Hydrogen Fuel Cells and Batteries group exhibit at Hanover Messe 2014. This afternoon, I will be speaking with Geoff Budd from ITM Power on Hyundai Hydrogen Refueling Station in the U.S. Please welcome Geoff Budd to the stage.
Thank you.
So in September, ITM had its first sale into the U.S. With Hyundai for hydrogen energy and the refueling station. So perhaps maybe you can just provide a little bit of context to the audience about how this project came about and who are the partners you're working with on this project.
Sure. It was in fact towards the end of 2012 that we became active in California, and at that particular time, we began our focus on the opportunities provided by the California Energy Commission in terms of providing grants and funding for fueling stations in California, part and parcel of the infrastructure rollout. And at the beginning of 2013, we put together a consortium of another two companies together with ITM in California. The lead partner is a company by the name of Hydrogen Frontier, or H2 Frontier. And the other partner is a Canadian company, PowerTech Labs. PowerTech Labs is a wholly owned subsidiary of BC Hydro, and they're involved in the actual refueler technology, compression and storage. It was at the beginning of 2013 that we decided to go after a specific project in California together with those two partners, with Hydrogen Frontier, H2 Frontier as the lead applicant for the funding for a fueling station.
And regarding to the funding, what was the cost of this station?
So the station, I think the right way to answer that question is as follows. In 2013, the California Energy Commission had roughly $30 million in terms of what they planned to distribute to successful applicants. And within that particular funding round, they had a number of different categories that they were funding. And right at the top of the list, as is the case this year, they have a funding category for 100% renewable hydrogen. And that particular category was a funding amount of $3 million. And for that particular year, a match fund requirement of 25% of that. So the project, together with all three partners, came in at $3 million for that particular station sited at Hyundai's facility in Chino.
Okay, and this station is going to be open to the public. And what stage of the project are you currently in?
Right, that's correct. The Hyundai fuel cell facility in Chino, which is on Interstate 10 as you travel out of LA towards Palm Springs, already had a station, a very old station on site that was obsolete. That was one of the reasons why we chose to go there, was to get their interest in renewing that particular station, which they agreed to have as a public station open to all customers driving fuel cell vehicles. We were awarded the actual grant last year at this particular conference. We heard about the news. So we began our process of signing contracts and getting agreements in place, which we finalized with our partners in August of last year. And of course, prior to that, we'd already started our planning in terms of production. So one of the first requirements in California starts with an environmental study that's required in terms of being signed off all the way through to the permitting process. So I'll wind the tape forward. We received our first permitting approval on January the 5th of this year. We're currently in the stage of submitting the detailed engineering drawings to the city of Chino for final permitting, together with the architectural plans for the particular site, because the site will be changed quite substantially. And little things like we have to, every tree we take out, we've got to put 4 new trees in. So you can see very environmentally friendly. We're in the stage of planning to deliver our unit in June, July of this year, together with our partners out of Canada. And commissioning, so installation and commissioning is still on schedule, which will begin in August, September. Our target date is, as in the contract, the 31st of October this year.
Wow. So in terms of the station, when will it actually be open to the public? And can you maybe walk us through how the public will gain access to this station and how they can utilize it? Sure.
So the last point, as you can well imagine, this is not a public petrol gas station site that the actual unit is going on to. So therefore, Hyundai has had to agree to a bit of a modification to their particular driveway and parking lot. So that's now been modified such that cars can come into there and onto their property 12 hours during the actual day. That's when it's open to the public. The fueling station will be open, as I mentioned, to the public and will have a standard POS, point of sale, piece of hardware and software, which you find on petrol pumps or gas pumps in the States, to be able to acquire your fill of hydrogen for your vehicle. To begin off with, that's going to be covered by companies like Hyundai, as you've probably read. They'll lease vehicles and cover the fuel costs. So those costs will then be charged to Hyundai as an example. We're not too sure what the other OEMs will do in future, but it will have a point of sale, a typical point of sale interface with the customers as they in fact come up and fuel their vehicles.
Okay, so ITM is currently involved with this one station. How many refueling stations is California expecting in the near future? What is their total number of fueling stations expected?
Okay, so starting from where we are today in California, if you have a look at the California Fuel Cell Partnership website, they have a full listing of all of the hydrogen filling stations that are in existence today. And they're roughly about 17 or 18. Half of those are public, the other half are private. And getting back to your question, last year in October, Governor Brown, the governor of the state of California, signed into legislation a revision of AB 118 into a new bill, AB 8, that has a target of 100 stations that will be subsidized and for which grant money will be made available to basically put these stations in operation. I think it's through to 2020. So there's a total of $200 million that they've actually put aside in the future that they'll make available to support the distribution and the installation of hydrogen infrastructure for fuel cell vehicles in California.
Okay, what is the rollout schedule for these anticipated stations? Like, what is the frequency per year? How many should we expect over the next little while?
That's a really interesting question. It's a very dynamic situation. For example, the last funding round that was awarded, it was totally undersubscribed. So of a total of an expected 12 to 14 stations with the $30-odd million, they awarded only 7. This particular round, we've heard that it's been very oversubscribed. So in terms of the money available, my expectation is that anything between 8 to 12 stations will be funded on an annual basis. However, in 2015, the government will go back and reanalyze the actual deployment of stations, and from what we hear, the promises or the expectations that the OEMs are putting out there in terms of when they will provide vehicles to be purchased or leased by consumers in the state of California.
Does ITM have any plans or any anticipation to be involved with any of these future stations in California?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We've formed and registered our first company in the States, in California, based in Irvine. Our Steve Jones will be moving across to the States towards the end of this year to run that company, and the primary objective, in fact, of doing that is to support our rollout and installation of fueling stations. I'll add a bit extra in there. California is the only state in the United States that has legislated energy storage. So that fits into our segments perfectly in terms of the types of products. So we're set in California with a daughter company, a subsidiary of ITM Power Plc, that will in fact be supporting our rollout of stations in the years ahead.
Outside of the U.S., do you have any other projects going on in terms of refueling stations as well that you'd like to go over?
Yes, if you have not read recently, we hope you have. We've just been awarded a contract, or at least a funding round and a contract to be finalized for 3 refueling stations that will be located in London in the UK. So that's in fact the next round. We are going to be delivering some fueling stations onto Eco Island, the Isle of Wight, south of England, and those particular fueling stations will be installed prior to the end of this year. That's a bit of the next short-term future in terms of what we're doing.
Great. I'm going to open questions to the audience. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Geoff Budd regarding the fueling stations and the progress that ITM has made in the sector? Okay, I think that, over here.
I would just like to know how the cost of a hydrogen refueling station compares to a conventional one, a petrol station, and do you expect with a further rollout of those hydrogen stations, like an economies of scale, and how would that curve kind of like look like? What do you expect for the future there?
So when you look at the different types of source of hydrogen that can be made available to the drivers of fuel cell vehicles, and you expect that the vast majority of those particular vehicles and consumers will be filling up at petrol stations or fueling stations. You have currently the option of producing on-site electrolysis, on-site reformation, which companies do, or the delivery and supply of high-pressure bundles or even cryogenic hydrogen. When you have on-site production, your capex is going to be, of course, higher than just putting a storage site on a station premise and then delivering hydrogen. But I think at the end of the day, the real question is not how much the capex costs to put it on there. It's really the value proposition over a specific economic time period. And in our particular case, what's really important is in the on-site production of hydrogen with electrolysis, the cost of power to us is more important than the capex, or to the consumer that buys the hydrogen from the actual station. So it's very dependent upon on a number of factors other than capex. Permitting, for example. If we think ahead in terms of storing a lot of hydrogen on site in a very highly populated urban area, that's created a lot of problems and discussions in terms of the hazardousness of storing a ton or two of hydrogen in a city or a populated area. So on-site production is favored in that regard. There are more factors associated to what decisions are made other than just the capex or the capital costs of product that go on-site and that are installed on-site. But there are targets for the price of hydrogen, and we're all moving in that particular direction in terms of what the DOE targets have been set at.
Did you have any further questions to add?
Maybe just one further question. When do you expect that hydrogen refueling stations wouldn't need any further subsidization anymore? What time span do you expect for that?
That's a really good question. The California Fuel Cell Partnership has done a study, and the study is called the Hydrogen Infrastructure Rollout, their roadmap. And they have some figures in there in terms of what the expected costs are associated to the price of hydrogen to the consumer as they buy the hydrogen. Their expectation is that sometime short of 2020, you'll start to see the effects of economies of scale, large quantity delivery, or in our particular case, the ability to be able to enter into contracts with energy suppliers that provide clean, cost-effective electricity to be able to do that. So, of course, it's like any business. The less you buy, the higher the cost. The more you buy, the lower the cost. So it's a price-volume relationship. So my guess, this is my personal feeling, after looking at some of the documents and articles that have been presented about this, sometime before the year 2020 would be the case, which is what the California government has targeted in terms of their bridging grant funding finance.
Anyone else in the audience have any questions for Geoff? Anyone? Okay.
Just one last point. This particular station is in fact a 100% renewable hydrogen station. It'll be the first in California. And it's a station that'll not only fuel cars at 700 bar, it'll also fuel forklift trucks on site at the Hyundai facility at 350 bar.
Great. Any other questions regarding that? Okay. At this time, Geoff, thank you so much for being here and joining me on stage. I think this sums up our time today.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks. Thank you.